Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Furi. So, one of the problems that may arise here is if I take breaks, which is the right move, it's of the two choices between each boss fight to let my fingers rest, do I then potentially fall out of the pattern and out of the flow, muscle memory of button presses and interactions, which is also a possibility, but taking breaks is definitely the right move. You probably might, if you can handle it, want to play the whole game all the way through in one sitting, but that would be a lot. You'd have to be fairly good at the game and have beaten it multiple times first. I imagine speedrunners want to play through the game through one sitting, which speedrunners do that for all games. There is also, I bet, a little bit of a comparison here in that if you were going to play something like Bayonetta all the way through one sitting, you might stay more in the flow and get higher scores doing that also. Although in the case of like just Bayonetta 1, for example, there is a lot of lower level enemies and encounters and a lot more grind than what this game is. This is all boss fight and a boss rush, so with just a little bit of cinematic walk and talk as we are going now to the next world, might as well call it a world, with very wonky controls. Like, they don't even really have it programmed acceptably well.
But don't expect all the answers. It's all about what a man does.
Like, the size there was not well shown and projected to make it seem like you were going to fly on a platform to another area. But yeah, at a certain point it should just be a cutscene because the controls are so wonky here.
That, my friend, is a prison. A prison within a prison. A very clever trick.
I imagine what it is that they spent the majority of their effort programming controls from a top-down perspective and just didn't polish the almost Resident Evil 1 cinematic angles that are being controlled here, where it's potentially changing a way in which you're walking. So we can't like interact or do anything. If I press A, it goes into a walk and talk mode. But honestly, the game probably should just force you to do that. Although it is somewhat disjarring whenever the game takes control away from you. But you can either press A, let it cinematically walk, or you can awkwardly control it yourself. Which arguably, in this case, it kind of makes sense to take control away a little bit more, like, because you won't get stuck against the walls.
Destroyed everything in her wake, and then bam, she got caged.
Yeah, you'd almost want to put up like a timer saying next fight starts in 2 minutes, or hold A to skip to next fight, and then otherwise just make this be a cutscene. Now, I don't think you get quite enough of a definition of what this world is, but it, to me, seems a lot like maybe One Punch Man in the comparison, or Dragon Ball, if you want to go to an older reference, where there's just a bunch of very strong supervillains that show up and seem to get caught, which would imply that there's also at least one really strong superhero that can take on supervillains, or a very well efficient army they could take out on supervillains and lock them up in a prison. So it paints, or it just teases at the background world as being something that could certainly be expanded, and you can make a Furi 2 if you wanted to, I think fairly easily. Although the problem with this is each boss is going to potentially, there could be potentially so much of a power creep at the end of this game.
Completely insane, enraged. She'll hunt anything and rip it to pieces. Now that's some jailer, right? But you and me, we know that being locked up fucks you up inside. We know that so well, don't we? That's why we did what we did. That's why we're getting out.
I guess the question comes down to,
our story doesn't end like hers.
how can you reset the power creep if you were going to make a sequel? And I'm going out of my way specifically to walk everywhere just to see if maybe there's some kind of Easter egg, line of dialogue, or achievement. Although it doesn't really seem like there is. It seems like this may have been a game that had been developed where you could have put some kind of Easter egg element there, and they thought better of not doing that. But yeah, I could see potentially having something that you collected to increase your health by 1 tank, or you have to collect 10 or 100 of the things to increase your health by 1. There's a heavy level of magic / sci-fi technology in this world also. So you have this jail that seems to regenerate its walls, keeping this jailer in prison themselves. So they've effectively made it so the prisoners are their own jailers, and perhaps there should have been a little bit more of an explanation around how that works. That the magical portals don't open when there's 2 people, or don't open until the jailer dies. If it was a case that the jailer had to die for the portal to open, that would even make your protagonist a little bit more sympathetic. So you have this fairly weird looking lady who has a electronic laser beam, and she's on skates. There's a lot of walls. If she hits the walls, they'll break. If I hit the walls, they'll also break. And so that's what I'm supposed to do, is use more of the walls as a safety precaution. So I should just back off when she's orange. And there was a parry. Now notably, there's not really too much you can do when you're backing off. You don't get as good of a view around her as you'd like. Like, that is something that does seem to stick around. They have affected the bullet hell quite a bit here, and she has like more powerful bullets. Now she has explosive bullets. I guess the question that would come down here is, can you dodge through a bullet? Because you're not really in a good situation where you can just take a hit. You're also not in a good situation where you can keep an eye on your own life bar, so what you kind of would like to see here is the audio messing up. When you take a hit, like something that you don't have to keep an eye on. And you can try to parry that. I'm not even sure I'm hitting the right button for parrying. And some of this, it seems like, whoops, she's changed her pattern now. So how you basically have to take a hit the first time they do a pattern. So she had her arms bound behind her and she had a scythe attached to her. So now we're in a completely different round. And the question, I guess, is going to come down to, if you're dashing, can you dash close enough to get in tight and sword attack? Because your sword attacks are probably good attacks to use, even if you're not in the area. That's more of a homing shot than I thought it was. Now I'm probably going to lose this round here. And they just pounce on you, I guess, when you do lose a round. There's this square here that I'm not sure that really does anything. I guess this is probably an invisible wall. So you can get him against the wall, but it's probably not the right move. Generally speaking, part of this is going to come down to the fact that I probably don't have enough of a reaction time. Yeah, or I'm just going to get leveled into the wrong attack. And see, there's life bar 2. Yeah, I'm trying to parry here and I'm really failing at it. So it feels like the second one may be the one. I'm still not even really sure what I'm supposed to do with the seeking. Yeah, there's a delay, I think, like, that you have to do to do the flash. I don't think it's as simplistic as press B, then press B, then press B. I think it's press B, then pause some amount of time. Seems like she straight up will attack certain things. So, like, her targeting is off. Yeah, with that, I'm game over.
Now. We're on the road to freedom. You will beat her.
Okay, so let's do it again. Let's continue and try it one more time, but there is a decent chance here, and you can notice in this, again, a little bit of lack of polish, in that it loads into this other menu. The opponent is attacked. He's vulnerable for a short amount of time. Dodge, charge, slash. You can dodge while charging a slash. Probably not doing charge slashes enough. And see, it just says press a specific button. And when I hit A to play, it's just playing the video from the beginning again. It's not letting me, like, experiment or work on a specific attack. So, yeah, I'll give this a chance. We'll try it one more time, but there's a decent chance here that I should just admit that I'm not good enough. And I kind of knew it going in. That is in part why I have been reticent to play this game, and I have specifically on a long list of Steam backlog games actually worked to kind of avoid playing this game. So if I hit this, that seems to just anger her and make her incredibly vulnerable. Noticeably, the charge shot just feels like it's not even viable. Like, I don't know how I could do a charge shot in this scenario. See, that reset the whole fight, so... She hasn't even gotten to the point where her arms are broken free yet. You also have a weird situation here. Well, where the character is somewhat sympathetic, being imprisoned themselves, being tied up. Yeah, I just don't think a charge shot works on this character at all, in any stance. Although it does seem to me like there might be quite a bit of extra safety to attack from a distance and see if you can wear down a character's life. Although, honestly, that may just slow down the process so much that you're exhausting yourself more with these tiny little bullets than if you were to just go in for the kill. And one of the things I don't enjoy around these kinds of boss fights is when every boss has a unique attack, and with that unique attack you learn the pattern, and then it is not particularly connected in any way to what you'll fight in the future. I'm lucking out by staying far away from the character more than actually using the dive or the parry attack. It definitely feels to me like you just don't do enough damage. Unless you're attacking with a sword. The gun seems pathetically weak. And maybe in that there is a thought that... Whoops. Maybe you could have gotten an upgraded gun. There is also certainly that thought as far as... Am I supposed to wiggle? I may actually have maybe am hurting myself by not wiggling. Yeah. I lost that round and it reset her life completely. Yeah, I don't even think charge slashes, if I could do charge slashes, are wise. This whole maze is just way too much. What if I was to do this? That, I guess, may have been an example of a punish attack. Although... But the game really just will not let you go further unless you can get the damage in on the character, probably from a parry attack. And you see it even worse in some scenarios where the character basically can only be defeated by a specific combo or reaching a specific spot. We saw that in one of the rounds with the first jailer character. There is, I think, an argument to be made that the color palette here might be a problem too, in that it may be a little bit hard to figure out what you're supposed to do in certain scenarios. Do we have any more squares? So I'm trying to see if, I guess I have to just avoid that third round. Interesting. Dodged that time. Yep. See, I got knocked down, and that just reset the round without it even trying to attack me. Interesting. So sometimes it's not going to just go into the attack animation. I had to go to the entirety of the map. Doesn't feel like you get enough squares to really justify. Like coming back to the center and trying to distract it. Come on. I'm getting better at these punishes. Back to the close combat, which at any point I can mess up. The wiggling of the analog sticks is an input that's a little bit counter and helpful, I guess would be the best way to say it. Because if you're wiggling the sticks, then you're not going to I think I may have just fallen off the edge there. If you're wiggling the sticks, then you're not going to be in the right position with the buttons for the next attack, but you really do need to be more lined up for that next attack. Maybe I should go forward like I just did. Okay, it was 4 combos. And so basically, the flash attacks are things you have to realize and turn into good things, not bad things. So you can refill your health with it. Although the problem with that is you have to get really, really good at parroting. And if you're not going to get good at parroting, then you're going to not get anywhere in this.
You can't stop now. We're on the road to freedom. You will beat her.
Okay, so in what is almost certainly an impossible hope, I was hoping I would be able to beat all of the bosses, of which I assume there are 10 in total, so 9 more, including the one we're failing at here. I was hoping I'd be able to beat all of the bosses on the regular difficulty, with it only taking about 30 minutes for each boss fight. And in all fairness, we did get her down to 2, maybe 3 life bars. So unless the pattern drastically changed, which I actually think it does drastically change, so we haven't even gotten into that third phase of a 3-phase boss fight. And I suspect boss fights later on are going to have even more phases. We're struggling quite a bit, and my fingers again are starting to feel like they're getting the beginning of some blisters on their thumbs. So next recording we will change the difficulty down to the easy mode, and we'll just play the game through easy mode. This is perhaps maybe the most generous way you can make a game that has DLC. By default, I don't believe games should have DLC. I don't believe in pre-ordering. I don't believe in DLC. I feel like, particularly since this is a 2016 game, any DLC in this game could have been added to the second game, that a Furi 2. And I do think at this point we are really at the point where games should have sequels, but not trilogies or long-running series. So a Furi 2, even in 8 years later, potentially, would be acceptable, because it would be known that that's going to be the only sequel to this game, and if they're going to make any more Furies after that, they would probably take another 8 years and just make a soft reboot or a soft continuation to a quadrilogy where you have a new story with a new character. So yeah, a hard game hiding more difficult sections in DLC. That was about the nicest way you could sell DLC. It is the exact opposite of games being made artificially hard, which I don't believe that is really the case in this game. If the game was made artificially hard, they wouldn't have had an easy mode in the first place. But there definitely are cases where games are made artificially hard, and then there's DLC that makes the game back to being normal or easier, and that is the worst case scenario for these kinds of games. The other thing you could certainly do is just have cosmetics as DLC for people with too much money and not enough sense, and that would be fine too if they just wanted to make different visuals. Although these characters don't have quite enough backstory outside of their attack patterns, and so even though the visuals are a little wild, you would have had to have hoped that some kind of like Netflix animated series would have come out to explain these characters better. And this game came out just a little too early for something like that to have happened, and really without the likes of streaming services like Netflix to make cheap animated series and greenlight projects like that, you're then, if you can't do that, you'd be back to some kind of comic book or something that very few people would see. So, yeah. I feel like I may have fallen into a bit of a ramble there. But yeah, this will be the end of this episode. Next episode, we'll change the difficulty. We'll hopefully then beat the boss. My hope is in beating the game, maybe you would get a stronger gun. If I got a stronger gun and it took another 20-30% of the life out with every hit, I think that might work. Or even a stronger sword. Like, I do think it probably would be doable with just slightly better equipment to do a little bit more damage. Although, in all fairness, if I'm struggling on normal mode with the second boss character, then I'm probably just going to struggle throughout the entirety of the game. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a link down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.